For today's talk, it's my pleasure to introduce Pinto da Silva. So Anna is an associate teaching professor in human-centered design and engineering, and she's the director of the Masters of Human-Computer Interaction and Design program, which is a joint program jointly offered by HCDE along with iSchool, Computer Science, and the Division of Design. So it's an interdisciplinary program that HCDE jointly offers with 3 other units on campus. But Anna also has been doing some really interesting work around aging, some of the stuff around like kind of the community work and some stuff around the startup world. So I'm excited to hear what she'll present. So with no further ado.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, can you all hear me okay? Is this good? Yeah. Okay, first and foremost, Julie, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really honored to have time with all of you. Talking about aging and longevity is a real passion of mine. So I'm just really, really, truly grateful to have the opportunity to share the work. So this is one of my very, very favorite quotes in the whole wide world. This is Margaret Mead, one of the most famous cultural anthropologists of the 20th century. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So before I begin, I want to tell you a little bit about my own personal story. It was the passion, the joy, and the sense of purpose that my grandparents had. And I just want to say in the aging and longevity work, you see a lot of this connection where people, innovators in this space, are very inspired by their grandparents. And it has to do with the generational moment that you have as an innovator to connect with some degree of skill to the work of innovating with and for older people. So it was really the joy and the sense of purpose that my grandparents had, even during the very last days of their lives, that has inspired me towards this work. Over the past 20 years, I've had the incredible opportunity to work with extraordinary organizations such as MBBJ, Microsoft, and Amazon, working alongside some of the most inspired change makers defining the future of technology. My work with these extraordinary partners was done alongside my work as a community servant and founder of Cha Seattle, a speaker series dedicated to hosting courageous conversations at the scale of community. Through this work, I've organized 79 public events, collaborating with Seattle's wide-ranging civic landscape to unite over 900 speakers of every age and background to a diverse regional audience as we seek to learn and grow together. At MBBJ, I had the privilege of working alongside managing partner Scott Wyatt on groundbreaking building competitions such as this one, which is for the Bullet Foundation's Net Zero Challenge sponsored by Dennis Hayes, the founder of Earth Day. And also to work with beloved and legendary landscape architect Bill Johnson on the winning competition entry for the Stanford University School of Medicine Li Ka-Shang Center for Learning and Knowledge, under the leadership of Dr. Philip Pizzo, the former dean of the Stanford School of Medicine and the founding director of the Stanford Distinguished Careers Institute, and a personal hero of mine. At Microsoft, I worked on the historic strategic prototyping team, a group of brilliant technologists and troublemakers put in place by Bill Gates in the early days of Microsoft to help envision the future-defining technologies in the 3 to 10-year space. The StratPro team was responsible for building the Microsoft Home of the Future. The Microsoft Home of the Future served as a showcase for scenario-driven technology envisioning, helping C-suite executives, foreign dignitaries, and political leaders understand the future of work, live, and play in order to build the collaborative technology frameworks necessary to bring forward defining technologies across the next decade. This deeply interdisciplinary and intergenerational work required intensive creativity, collaboration, and execution across all accountabilities. It required an in-depth knowledge not only of technology, but of the history of home and its essential purpose across human history. Top-line insight: across all ages and cultural contexts, home is hearth. Home is heart. The Microsoft Home of the Future featured over 15 demos covering topics as diverse as the future of wellness to this intergenerational co-creation story time demo illustrating the future of play across generations, bedtimes, and geographies, and was propelled forward by a purpose-built operating system that allowed the home to flex and adapt in real time, connecting visitors to experiences as they toured the Microsoft Home. From Microsoft, I went to Amazon, where I had the privilege of being a founding member of the team that brought forth groundbreaking products such as Amazon Care, Amazon Explore, Amazon Echo Frames, work, and the Amazon Glow product, which actually was very inspired by some of the work we did on the Microsoft Storytelling Home experience, merging intense focus on science and technology towards world-changing, customer-centric innovation. It was at my time at Amazon that I led Thrive, an initiative to radically reframe age and aging, culminating in a culture-defining conference attended by Amazon's senior leadership, Washington State's entire legislative slate, including Governor Jay Inslee, Senator Patty Murray, Congresswoman Susan DelBene, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and others, along with 30 national leaders from organizations such as AARP, the SCAN Foundation, the MIT Age Lab, and the Stanford Center on Longevity, to name a few. The conference united over 700 attendees from across Amazon around the world to think big and deliver results as we sought to imagine transformative products and services that addressed the full arc of the 100-year life. As director of MHCID, building inspired communities of practice centered on learnership and leadership continues to be my enduring passion. This work is intergenerational, it is cross-disciplinary, and it is profoundly collaborative. And ultimately, it is foundationally necessary as we take on the urgent task of defining the future together. Whether as a designer, a technologist, a startup founder, a community servant, or educator, I am deeply inspired by the life and leadership of Congressman John Lewis. I believe deeply in the pursuit of good trouble. Deep, honest-to-goodness, roll-up-your-sleeves troublemaking. Why? Because if you're going to attempt to rewrite the future, you'd better make sense that you're pointing at the right pot of trouble. Big, surfing at Maverick-style trouble. Trouble that involves challenges that are so hard they crush your ego flat. Challenges that require a run and a long leap of faith, all done without the safety net of certainty. Challenges that can only be met by working desperately, closely, and all out together. Understanding aging and the consequences of widespread human longevity have become an obsession for reasons that I hope I can make clear. I'm here to share that story with you with the hope that together we can write a new story. A story of promise, a story of resilience, of agency, of empowerment, and a new story about long life. So as with many great adventures, my obsession with aging began with a single book. In this case, Atul Gawande's Being Mortal. Atul's book opened my heart to the issues that so many people face as they age, helping me understand the pressing need to find solutions that were inspired by empathy and framed by care. Since that time, I've met some of the most incredible people, crisscrossed the Midwest in a bus for what I've called the Heartland Tour of Age in America with Dr. Bill Thomas, visited countless nursing homes, including a one-star nursing home in Detroit, which was haunting, and a 3-star nursing home up here in Lower Queen Anne, which was worse. And I can take you there right now, and I don't think we would be the same. I'm just going to say that. And of course, I read a stupid amount of books, wrote an insane amount of reports, and drafted manifestos. And then, inspired by all of this work, I took the leap and I launched Together, a home and community startup focused on connecting passion to purpose, delivering solutions that help people of all ages and abilities thrive. Throughout this journey, one thing has remained perfectly clear. As innovators, we have a unique role to play in the lives of older people and their communities of care. The lift is big, but the potential impact is bigger. If we get this right, we can transform the lives across the United States and around the world. Is this a grand challenge? Absolutely. Does it involve troublemaking in all its ego-crushing glory? Absolutely. Is there a big, fat, juicy jobs for designers and technologists in all this mess? You betcha. So let's dive in. So first, a few facts and figures. The world is aging, and that is a fact. According to the United Nations, by next year, 1 billion people worldwide will be older than 60. In the United States, 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every day. The widespread longevity we experience across the world today is unprecedented. For the majority of human history, longevity was experienced by a small fraction of the world's population, hovering on average of 30 years old for about a millennia. The rapid transition towards longer life began just about 250 years ago with the advent of industrialization. Propelled forward by critical advances in science and medicine, infant and maternal mortality sharply declined, and the once devastating impact of infectious diseases were blunted. The net result? The gift of longevity was bestowed more broadly, causing what amounts to a seismic shift in the number of people who were able to experience longer lives. Longevity represents one of humanity's single greatest achievements, with profound implications reaching across every dimension of our lives. Where we live, how we receive care, become educated, develop our careers, create community, build businesses, save for retirement, and even communicate will be transformed as the world responds to the challenges and opportunities presented by an aging planet. So let's talk first about the upside of aging. So before I dig in, I just want to emphasize that a lot of the facts and figures that I'm sharing with you are US-centric. Aging is a massive topic, so I had to kind of constrain. So of course, there's a lot of very important research that's done all over the world, in Japan, in China, across the continent of Africa, in Europe, South America. And it is of course, culturally contextually relevant, shaped because it's so impacted by the way that we frame policy, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the talk. So back to the upside of aging. Older Americans are responsible for significant financial, cultural, and technological contributions across the board, providing an important demographic dividend for our society as a whole. Americans 55 and older control the majority of wealth in the United States. Today, nearly half the U.S. population will be over 50 and controls 70% of all disposable income in our country. Retirees lead the nation in giving. While retirees account for just 31% of the adult U.S. population over 25, they contribute 42% of the money given to charity and 45% of all total volunteer hours. And I'm here to say the country would not be the same without these immense contributions that older people supply to our country. Older Americans are increasingly entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs ranging in the ages of 55 to 64 represent over 1/4, 25% of all new entrepreneurs today. Older people play an important role in the lives of younger people. They serve as mentors, teachers, and guides, helping younger people acquire the crucial educational and life skills that they need to navigate in a challenging and complex world. Fun fact, older people are happier than younger people. Studies across the board show that older adults have lower rates of clinical depression. This is a very well-known chart. It's called the SMILE chart. And I just want, maybe Julie will resonate with this. Julie, you and I are at the bottom, all right? And y'all are like towards the left, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic that things are getting better for me eventually. And this has to do with the stresses that people in child raising years have, particularly with the sandwich generation. But this has been a very persistent finding. Now, we've talked a bit about the upside of aging. Let's talk about the downside. Now, it is important to note that the upside of aging is not equally experienced. While older people at the top of the economic ladder are more able to leverage the longevity dividend, the vast majority of older Americans and their families are struggling, and they're struggling hard. Although average lifespans have increased over the last century, the incidence of chronic disease threatens to reverse these historic gains. Many experts believe that in a single generation, obesity may erase all of the health gains made in the last 50 years. Now, Alzheimer's and related dementias affect almost 50% of people over 65. Moreover, retirement is broken. We are simply not financially prepared for 30-year retirements. Too frail to work, too poor to retire is the new normal for many older Americans, with almost half of the workers in the United States without a retirement plan. And I am here to tell you, brothers and sisters, most people hit retirement with less than $4,000 in their bank. That's facts. Poverty. Close to half, 45% of adults 65 and older had incomes below twice the poverty thresholds. Most older people are women. 2.3 million women over the age of 65, that's 11.5%, live at or below the poverty line. And I will invite anybody here to go and work on any of the homeless shelters. You will see an absolute epidemic of older women who are living on the streets, too afraid to go into shelters because of the abuse that they face when they are co-housed with people who are not older women. Very, very difficult. On average, nursing home costs would consume 246% of the median annual household income of older adults. 246%. Home care, while generally more affordable, still represents 84% of the median income, an unsustainable cost over long periods of time. Now let's talk about social isolation. People do not age in isolation, and when they do, the outcomes are bad. Older people without adequate social interaction are twice as likely to die prematurely. The mortality risk is comparable to that from smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I just want to go back to this. We also know that social isolation is deeply, deeply impactful for younger people too. And this is a place where we see technology creating an impact, both good and bad, for both generations. And we'll talk about artificial separation that when we use age-based segmentation, it erases our ability to see the connections across generations and create more holistic solutions. So, asymmetrical longevity. The impact of systemic racism and patterns of discrimination that undermine the economic outcomes of Americans of color, combined with the adverse consequences of age discrimination, not only undercut the ability of many older Americans to create robust financial futures necessary to fund extended retirements, but in many cases they actually shorten lives. The difference in life expectancy between the most and least affluent Americans nearly doubled over the last 20 years of the past century, with white women living an average of 12 to 14 years longer than their black male counterparts. Now, ageism is rampant. Age is not the only social category identifying subgroups. Let me start again. Age is the only social category identifying subgroups that everyone, if you are lucky, may eventually join. And this is one of the reasons that AARP is such an important nonprofit organization. I'm very fortunate to have been mentored by Nancy Lamond. AARP, because aging cuts across both Democrats and Republicans, there's a lot of mutuality when we look at policies developed for the benefit of older people. So you can think about aging as the ultimate democratizer. But despite this, age-based prejudice, otherwise known as ageism, is alive and well. So ageism is a form of discrimination and prejudice that is particularly experienced by older people. Most older people are, in fact, mentally and physically active regardless of their age, with a great deal to contribute to their work, their families, and to their communities, and quite frankly, to the broader culture. However, societal norms marginalize older people. They treat them with disrespect, make them feel unwelcome, and otherwise generalize them as if they were all the same. Ageism undermines human potential and cuts work lives short. And by the way, for the careers that we are all in the middle of building, this is especially true in the technology industry. A seminal study by researchers at Yale University found that older people with more positive self-perceptions of aging lived, wait for it, 7.5 years longer than those with less positive self-perceptions of aging. And this is pretty powerful stuff. So for everybody who's here, the next time you have a birthday, I don't care what the number is, own it. Just be like, yeah, I have been around the sun 34 times, 58 times, 72 times, 67 times. It's magnificent. Do it. It's so refreshing. So now what's the ground truth about aging? While people are living longer, they are not living longer well. Independence, the ability to pursue life on one's own terms, is central to unlocking the longevity bonus. Yet for millions of Americans, the ability to live independently is undermined by the myriad challenges that accompany aging. When personal resources are overtaxed by common age-related crises such as a fall, a stroke, or the death of a care partner, the only viable alternative for many becomes nursing home institutionalization, manifesting one of the most profound fears that older Americans have and a stark reality for millions, the loss of independence. Now, this is a Chinese character. It means crisis. It's the character for crisis, and it means crisis equals danger plus opportunity. And so when we are in crisis, and we will all find ourselves in crisis, our goal is to identify the opportunity within. There's always an opportunity, and it's usually a very hard one, so it's our responsibility to lean into that opportunity. Now, older people and their communities of care desperately need solutions that scale beyond those provided today. They need solutions that go beyond big, beige, and boring. They need solutions that not only address needs, but also address wants, that speak to their abilities, not just to their failings. So first, let's talk about danger. The major policy frameworks guiding the U.S. national response to aging are over 50 years old and are straining to withstand the intense demographic pressures presented by aging populations. It's a battle between the old and the new, a battle between old institutionalized ideas that position aging within a medicalized frame and newer, more emergent models that emphasize the centrality of what is called developmental aging, which positions aging as core to human development, not a problem to be solved, but a set of opportunities to be celebrated and supported. So alas, who is winning? The major policy frameworks guiding the U.S. response to aging are over 50 years old, dating back to the Older Americans Act signed in 1965 by President Lyndon Johnson, and are straining to withstand the intense demographic pressures presented by an aging population. The result? A constellation of pain points leaving millions of older adults and their communities of care struggling to cope. And I do want to say, for all of us who understand American history, Lyndon Johnson arguably was considered one of the greatest legislators in our nation's history. We do not have a Lyndon Johnson, right? And we can't expect that level of legislative exceptionalism is going to come, magically appear and unite the left and right, regardless of the amazing advocacy of Nancy Lamont. Right? And so it means that we have these very old frameworks and they're with us for quite some time. So now what is the opportunity? The opportunity is to gain mastery over the challenges presented by widespread human longevity. And in order to do so, we need to lean in hard. We need to define entirely new landscapes of innovation, engineered to meet the needs of our customers and of older people across the board. Individuals need products and services that help them live with independence, dignity, and agency. Families need products and services to help them cope with the increased challenges of long-term caregiving. And finally, communities across the country will need to reimagine transportation systems, public spaces, and even the way cities are designed and built in order to accommodate the needs of an increasingly older population. These two words are two of my favorite words. What if? So powerful. What if? In her book, A Long, Bright Future, Dr. Laura Carstensen, founding director of the Stanford Center on Longevity, asks, what if, instead of suffering, we could have not only lots of added years, but spend them being physically fit, mentally sharp, functionally independent, and financially secure? At that point, we no longer have a story about old age. We have a story about long life. So that's right, stories win. Being that you are all master storytellers, I don't need to tell you how powerful stories actually are. When they're told well, they are more powerful than the most on-trend technology, more powerful than a paradigm shift, and more potent than the strongest army. So who, exactly and precisely, will write the new story of long life? Given the almost pervasive magnetic pull of ageism on our psyches, how will we trust ourselves to tell the right stories? How will we know when we've gotten it right? And equally important, how will we know when we've gotten it wrong? So we need a map. To help us on our way, I offer a sort of Frankenstein roadmap comprised of two frameworks, a brief brand assessment, and a challenge. So first are the frameworks. Frameworks are super handy. They are simple means of helping us identify the most generative areas of opportunities and zones of impact for our innovation efforts. And these are the two that I share with you today are two that I developed. The first I developed with Dr. Bill Thomas and Dr. Babak Parvez. And the second one is one that I developed independently through my research and took many years to really identify, and I'm really excited to share them both with you right now. So the first framework we call point break. So in surfing, point break marks the moment that a wave changes. For us, the point break model describes the moment our needs overwhelm our available resources, pinpointing the moment an independent life can change to a dependent one. Point break presents three clear zones of opportunity. Pre-point break describes the time before a health event compromises independence and represents the largest, most proactive opportunity to effect change. Point break itself represents a moment of crisis, a fall, a stroke, the loss of a caregiver, in which the nature of one's independence is fundamentally altered. Post-point break represents a new normal, resulting from a health event or a fall in which a broader and more comprehensive system of support becomes essential. Now, you can go back and forth in and out of point break. And by the way, point break can happen at any point in your life. You could have an infant who's born with a heart defect. They're at point break from day one. It's just more normal that point break tends to happen towards the end of life. Now, increasing health span is really the goal of all of this work. It's the idea that what we want to do is increase the years of healthy life. And I just want to share with you here that if you look at point break and that moment to the right, this is where we spend 80% of our healthcare, right? 80% of healthcare is spent in the last 2 years of our lives, right? So what we want to do is, this used to be called the compression of morbidity, right? It's much more positive to say let's extend healthiness and well-being. But it really shows you from a policy perspective that if you innovate, right, in the pre-point break space, you're going to be able to give back trillions of dollars, right, to states across the country. And it's essentially the states that own the crisis. So using the Point Break as a launch pad, I offer the second framework. The Polaris framework gives us a new way of assessing whether our solutions either reinforce the status quo, which is less good, obviously, or they chart fundamentally new territory, which of course is better. So the 20th century model sees aging as an unrelenting journey of decline. You're born, you learn to walk, you learn to ride a bike, kiss a girl or a boy or both. You graduate high school, you go to college, you get married, buy a house, dog, kids, second house, whatever. You hit 50, and it's just all downhill, right? As you commence the slow, inexorable decline into irrelevance. That's basically the current model. We gray out. Now, by contrast, the 21st century model defines an entirely new narrative, and it's based on agency, resiliency, empowerment, and it presents a radically new narrative in which people are able to thrive across the full arc of their lives, supported by the solutions they need to live long and prosper. So let's compare and contrast. Whereas 20th century falling star model focuses on medical interventions to manage disease in the post-Point Break space, the 21st century shooting star model focuses instead on solutions that increase strength, improve health in the pre-Point Break space, relying on health and wellness strategies that are grounded in community and harness social connection. So contrary to widely held public opinion, strength can actually be increased at any age, even amongst the oldest old. The 21st century shooting star model is based on the groundbreaking work of Dr. Sarah Stanton at Johns Hopkins University and the work of Dr. Callie Thomas and Dr. Vincent Moore at Brown University, whose goals-based programs target strength and nutrition, measurably increasing the health and resilience of program participants, who include some of the most vulnerable seniors in the United States. If just small adjustments in diet and movement can have such powerful impacts for vulnerable older people, imagine what the impact of more substantive measures could have on the broader population. Okay, so now that we've talked about these frameworks, let's talk about the brand of aging. So, while I don't think any of us are fully ready to admit that we're almost at the quarter mark of the 21st century, which would be in about less than 3 weeks, I know, for real, I think it's fair to say that much of the brand experience of aging is still framed within the tried and true language of the 20th century. Though to be fair, we're seeing sparks of 21st century thinking illuminating the light sky, and we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. So first, let's talk about language. The words we use to refer to older people are painfully inadequate. When you all turn 50, would you like to be called a senior? Anybody? Senior?
Well, seniors are also fourth year in high school.
Yeah, true. We can lean into that definition for sure. What about elder? You know, elder, it feels a little loftier, right? It's more distinguished and it implies wisdom, but it's a little hobbitish, right? It's a touch of gentle exoticism in it. What about silver? Yeah, I have a touch of dyslexia. Sorry about that. Slivier. Anybody for that? Or maybe even golden, like you're in your golden years. And so these are euphemisms, right? These euphemisms hide a lot of bias. And we know how powerful that held bias can be on our lifespans. And there's still no doubt that the language we use to talk about aging is deeply problematic, but it's also very interesting. If we do a little etymological digging, something really fascinating emerges about these words. So first, the word old comes from the West Saxon eld, which means elder or experienced. But if we swim up the etymological river just a little bit further, we can see that the Proto-Indo-European root word for the word old means to grow or to nourish. So when we say to grow old, right, that's basically leaning into that very, very old etymology inside the word old. Now the word age is similarly fascinating, perhaps even more beautiful. Age comes from the Latin attentum, or period of life, lifetime, or years. Its Proto-Indo-European root word means vital force or eternity. How can we take a wire brush to our currently deadened and flattened sense of the words old age and return them to the full spirit of their magic, to thrive, to embrace eternity, to live with vital force? So now we've talked about words, right? Let's talk about images. When it comes to images and bias, looking at the reflected truth of an internet image search tells us more than we often want to know about ourselves and our broader culture. It's interesting to note that the internet seems to think that older people wear only beige with Easter egg hued pastels as their go-to for a color splash. And it's also disconcerting to see that aging, according to the internet, is a primarily white experience. Essentially, we find that there are two primary flavors with a few subcategories mixed in. Flavor one is the affluent, happy, white, older person, usually shown as a couple. The shadow of death has not marred this sunny scene. They are often seen on a beach, usually walking a yellow lab, which in this picture is implied just off screen. And they are usually selling Activa or Prudential Insurance or a Norwegian cruise vacation. Flavor two is equally problematic. It shows the broken, isolated senior, alone, depressed, unkempt, and disheveled, robbed of dignity and above all, agency. An object of pity, requiring our charity, not a full person who, even if struggling, it has agency, grace, and resiliency. Images like this normalize the idea of helplessness, tacitly implying that an older person is defined by what they can't do rather than by what they can. So now, what of stories? There are some good ones to be sure, like the Apple at Work underdog spot, which casually and hilariously name checks the older dad as the new parent. Or the really moving Handle with Care ad for Gillette's new assisted shaving razor. Or the wonderful Break Free commercial created by Adidas, ignored by Adidas originally, but made by filmmaking student Eugene Mariner. It's absolutely wonderful. But more often we see things like this charming number from Cologuard that helps you celebrate your 50th birthday with an in-home, non-invasive colon cancer test. Delish. So far better is the work of AARP and the work that they're doing to socialize events like the Cincuentañera, right? Taking a page off of our Quinceañera, celebrating turning 50 as something not to be hidden or feel ashamed about, towards an achievement and a milestone to be proud of and to celebrate. So now we've talked about words and images, so let's talk about messages. When it comes to getting older, it's as if marketers and product developers forget that older adults have wants and desires and visions, not just needs. Now, nothing better illustrates this than the small anecdote from my colleague David Mays, who had the privilege of interviewing John Glenn just before his space shuttle mission at age 77 in October of 1998. Now, there was some controversy about his inclusion in the mission, given his age. And when he was asked about the controversy, Commander Glenn replied, "What? You think that just because I'm old, I don't have dreams?" As the story of John Glenn underscores, our age is not an accurate measure of our agency or our ambition. Measures matter. If what is measured improved, it is essential to be sure that the systems of measure are accurate. In a company or an organization, right, it's hard to be sure of what I'm about to say, but there has to be a more meaningful way of understanding and assessing the lives of older people than age-based segmentation. So the needs of a 50, we tend to segment 18 to 24, 25 to 30, 25 to 34, 35 to 54, but after 55 plus, there's no age-based segmentation anymore, right? So it's very, very difficult to really understand the many milestones that occur between 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. And by the way, it's not all based on age. It has a lot to do with health and wellness and access to resources. Now, why is this? One word: pleiotropy. Now, pleiotropy describes the biological processes whereby people become more differentiated as they age. So while two 6-year-olds may be fairly similar, fast forward 54 years and compare them again when they're 60, and you will see marked differences between them that have less to do with age than the experiences, finances, genetics, and other environmental factors that have shaped their lives. So as an example, let's take the story of these two men named Charles. In this case, they are both British. They were both born in 1948. They were both married twice. They both have 2 kids, and quite frankly, both are rather wealthy. And despite these similarities, they have circled over the course of, as they've circled over the course of their lives, their unique differences between them have become much more pronounced. So all of this underscores the fact that as people age, their year number is simply not as relevant. The truer measure is the ability a person has to navigate their life from a physical, psychological, and financial standpoint. So why is this so important? It's important because you can't be what you can't see. So while there are bright sparks on the horizon, absolutely, people who are blazing trails and living with agency and originality as they age, we are lacking examples. Right now, there are exceptions. Chip Conley's work with the Modern Elder Academy is changing the narrative, but for my money, nobody does it better than John Waters with his recently published book, Mr. Know-It-All, The Tarnished Wisdom of a Filth Elder. These images and stories are generally subsumed with a tsunami of mediocrity and unquestioned status quo. Has anybody actually asked older people how they would like to be understood, portrayed, and seen? This fantastic piece on mermaid hair for older women from the New York Times gets at the desire for older women to have a fierce, playful edginess regardless of their age. The stylist behind this piece really got it right. So how might we work with leading edge creatives who are working side by side with older people, redefining a re-energized brand language that allows the multiplicity of lives lived to be captured, celebrated, and shared? So my challenge to all of us is, how do we rewrite the story of long life, right? How do we re-energize longevity and bring back that original sense of wonder, of magic, and potential that is at the heart of the meaning of what it means to age? So we need to do for the 50 plus what Eugene Gilbert did for teenagers in the 1950s, forever changing the way the world saw younger people, taking us from the adolescent angst of Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye in 1945 to the technicolor splendor of Gidget just 10 years later in 1965, defining a youth market that continues to shape behavior, products, and markets to this day. So stories are super powerful. They change people. They change perceptions and therefore behaviors, and ultimately they change the world. And so as innovators, we have to be really sensitive to the stories that we tell and the stories that we're part of. Now, culture shapes policy. Culture is the stories we tell each other about who we are. Our cultural values frame the policy frameworks that we then shape our product development. And these relationships are things that are rarely understood as vividly as they should be. Ultimately, culture drives the development and our major policy frameworks, and because of the vast purchasing power of the federal government, policy in turn becomes the almost invisible hand playing a crucial role in how products are developed. So to this end, and I'm going to kind of move through these pretty quickly, this is why I started my own company, and I'm going to just use my company together as a case study. So I found it together to address the urgent need of older people and their communities of care. And we look at the fact that millions of older people want to age in their homes and communities, but they can't. Only 3.8% of American homes are accessible. By 2030, most adults will experience some form of physical or cognitive impairment, which leaves the majority of older people with very few viable housing options. Inadequate home and community infrastructure compromise health and longevity, and even when people want to live in traditional senior living communities, they simply can't afford them. COVID-19 has multiplied these challenges, and it's really easy to feel overwhelmed. And even when people long to live in traditional senior living communities, they really can't afford them. So if you look here, this is the state of Washington, okay? And you can see that in every decade, where it's red, going from 2000, 2010, 2020, 2030, you see that aging is happening most quickly in our rural counties, right? And this is exactly where we do not have infrastructure. And by the way, look at the political consequences. Where are we? Where are the doctors, right? Where are the educators? They're not in these counties. People feel abandoned, and in fact, they actually are. So if we look at what's happening across Washington state, we can see that 1.5 million adults in Washington live with one or more chronic conditions. Washington state has, and we should be shocked by this, it's really unacceptable, some of the highest costs in nursing home care and assisted living in the nation. Now, let's use Pierce County as an example. 1 in 5 Pierce County residents are over 55. 2 out of 5 Pierce County residents are experiencing, or 52% are, there's a 52% increase in senior homelessness in Pierce County across the last 2 years, right? Over half of the homeless adults in Pierce County are living with a disability, and over 40% have more than one chronic disease. And Pierce County is really no different than any other county across Washington state. You can just mix and match the statistics, but it's pretty dire. Right, you need another 37,000 additional housing units in Pierce County over a 20-year planning period, and I can tell you right now they are not going to get there, right? So when we look at these impacts, we ask that question, what if again? So what if we could democratize seniors' housing to imagine homes and communities that don't just help people age in place, but allow them to live vividly in community with purpose, meaning, and connection? So with my company together, we imagine a world that where people can live their best lives regardless of age and community, and towards that end, we deliver a development toolkit that is designed to reduce costs and accelerate the development of homes and communities. And we do that through design-forward, wellness-centric smart homes and communities designed to deliver at a price point people can really afford. And the idea is predicated on home is health. And looking at how a fully integrated hardware and software solutions can deliver the infrastructure that older people need to thrive. So we can only deliver futures like this by leveraging systems thinking. So inspired by innovators such as Ethel Percy Andrus and Del Webb, Joseph Eichler, and of course the great and mighty Steve Jobs, we flipped the script on traditional seniors housing to focus on the development of scalable solutions designed to transform lives. So we call this Together Modular. It's based on caregiving results this is probably one of my proudest documents. This is a result of at least 60 interviews, 60 group interviews with caregivers from across the United States that helped us inform our home solution. And what we've developed is what we call on the left, we call this the motherboard. It's the modular system that can be amplified by an operating system and set within a smart community to deliver a flexible solution for homes and communities. So I'll just click through a little bit of this. Our target audience are really developers, and our goal is to accelerate the speed and reduce the cost and risk that they have when they bring homes into their communities. And I just want to say that I am really, really proud of the work that we've been doing. We've been collaborating with people such as Kathy Gillespie, who's an incredible leader working in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania, one of the poorest counties in Pennsylvania. And you can see that our solution up on the top in the Village of Hope is really cutting costs across the board. And I just want to say this is a picture from the fabricators that we work with to develop our home solutions. And these is our prototypes of the homes that we've developed. And last year, we actually opened our very first actual building, which turned out to be a fire station that leveraged our modular system. And here are some pictures from the fire station. This is my architect on the left, that's Matt Whitman, and on the right is our amazing client. This building is actually a modular temporary building that will be moved and used as a classroom at Rancho Mission Viejo later in its second utilization. And it's based on health and wellness. This is a Taj Mahal. Most firefighters live in mobile homes with lots and lots of deferred maintenance with a couple plastic chairs on the outside. And I just want to say that, and you can see this in this picture, did you know that every single person that lives in this fire station is over 55? It's amazing, right? So these are just some of the images. So I just want to say that community is really at the heartbeat of innovation. None of this work would have been made possible without the heart and hard work of countless collaborators, designers, manufacturing partners, and so many other magnificent change makers. So I just want to close by saying, let's consider the many diverse ways that we can work together to change the future. Thank you.